In the deep silence of space, the exploration ship named Resolute Dawn drifted among the distant stars. It was one of humanity's most advanced vessels, crewed by people known across the galaxy as Deathworlders. They were called that because their home planet, Earth, was considered one of the most dangerous worlds in the universe. Every day there, life fought to survive. From poisonous creatures to violent weather, humans had evolved to endure, adapt, and fight. To other species, they seemed almost fearless. But to the crew aboard the Resolute Dawn, they were just explorers, ordinary people seeking knowledge among the endless dark. Commander Evelyn Hart stood at the main viewing deck. Her eyes focused on the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. She had spent most of her life among the stars, searching for traces of civilizations that might have existed long before humans ventured into space. Her team trusted her completely. She was calm, decisive, and carried a quiet strength that inspired everyone around her. For months, their mission had been simple: mapping empty sectors, cataloging planets, and studying cosmic signals. It was a lonely job, but for explorers, loneliness was part of the adventure. The crew of the Resolute Dawn was small but efficient. There was Dr. Kellen, a scientist fascinated by alien biology; Lieutenant Mara, the communications officer who could decode signals faster than most machines; and Ensign Darius, a young pilot full of energy and curiosity. Each one of them had left behind their families and homes to be part of something greater, to explore the unknown. Days passed quietly. The hum of the ship's engines was like a heartbeat, constant and steady, keeping everyone grounded as they drifted through the stars. Then, one ordinary shift, something unexpected happened. A faint signal appeared on the communication screen, a strange sound pattern buried under waves of cosmic noise. Mara leaned closer, her fingers flying across the controls to filter the static. At first it was just static and bursts of digital tone. Then slowly a broken voice began to emerge. It was distorted and weak, but it was definitely a voice. "Help, please, anyone!" The bridge fell silent. Even the sound of the engines seemed distant. They all looked at Mara, who stared back with wide eyes. "It's a distress call," she said softly. Commander Evelyn stepped closer, her expression sharp but calm. "Can you trace it?" she asked. Mara nodded hesitantly. "It's hard to pinpoint. The signal is fragmented. Could be hundreds of light years away, maybe more." Dr. Kellen frowned. "Could be a trap," he muttered. They all knew that in deep space, not every call for help was genuine. Pirates, hostile species, and scavengers often used fake distress signals to lure ships. But something in Evelyn's gut told her this was different. The desperation in that voice was too real. "Boost the receiver," Evelyn ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The ship's systems hummed as power was redirected to the communication array. On the screen, symbols and coordinates began to appear, barely readable, half of them missing. But one thing was clear. The source of the call was in an uncharted region of space far beyond any known safe route. A place filled with storms, gravitational rifts, and magnetic distortions. It was a no-go zone for most ships. Darius looked nervous. "Commander, that area's a mess. Navigation could fail. We might not even make it back." Evelyn didn't respond immediately. She gazed at the fading signal again. "If that voice is real, someone's dying out there," she finally said. "And if we're the only ones who can reach them, then we don't turn away." Her words carried the weight of conviction. That was what made Deathworlders different. They didn't fear danger. They respected it, and they faced it head-on. The decision was made. The Resolute Dawn changed course. The crew prepared for the journey with quiet determination. They ran system checks, reinforced hull shielding, and recalibrated navigation sensors. The ship's engines roared softly as it turned toward the dark stretch of space where the signal came from. Outside, the stars seemed to thin, replaced by long shadows and faint storms of light. Space grew colder and emptier, like they were leaving behind the known universe and entering something ancient and forgotten. Hours turned into days. The distress signal continued to flicker, growing weaker and more distorted as they got closer. The crew slept in short shifts, always ready for an emergency. The silence of the unknown sector pressed against them like a heavy blanket. At times they thought they heard whispers on the comms, echoes of the original call repeating fragments of the same plea for help. "Help, trapped, dying." Each time it made their hearts beat faster. In the science lab, Dr. Kellen studied the signal patterns. He noticed that they didn't match any known human or alien technology. The frequency was ancient, almost primitive, but the encryption was advanced. "Whoever sent this," he said quietly, "they're not like anyone we've met before." Evelyn listened but said nothing. Her mind was already imagining what they might find. Wreckage, survivors, or maybe just empty space. Still, something inside her hoped it was real. Hope was what drove explorers to go farther than anyone else. As they neared the coordinates, the ship began to shake. Alarms buzzed as gravitational waves distorted their course. "Stabilizers failing," Darius reported, his hands tight on the controls. "Magnetic interference off the charts." The whole vessel groaned as if space itself was trying to push them away. "Hold steady," Evelyn commanded. "We're not turning back." The lights flickered, the screens glitched, but the Resolute Dawn held its path. It wasn't the first time humans had faced impossible odds, and it wouldn't be the last. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the storms cleared. The blackness of space opened up before them, and there it was, a massive dark silhouette floating motionless. It was a ship, but unlike anything they had ever seen. Its structure was elegant, almost organic, with long curved wings and a faint blue glow pulsing from its core. Parts of it were torn open, drifting in silence. "We found it," Mara whispered, unable to look away. The source of the distress call. The Resolute Dawn slowed to a crawl, scanning the alien vessel. Life signs flickered weakly across the sensors. "There are survivors," Dr. Kellen said in disbelief. "Not many, but they're alive." The air in the bridge grew heavy. They had found what they were searching for, but the real challenge was just beginning. Nobody knew what kind of species the survivors were, or if they would even understand human help, but Evelyn didn't hesitate. "Prepare the docking bay," she said. "We're going in." As the crew moved to their stations, Darius looked at her one last time. "Commander, we still don't know what's waiting for us on that ship." Evelyn nodded slowly. "That's true," she said. "But if we ever stop answering when someone needs help, then we stop being who we are." The Resolute Dawn extended its docking arms, locking onto the alien vessel. The metallic sound echoed through the corridors. For a moment, the entire crew stood still, feeling the weight of what they were about to do. Beyond those sealed doors was a mystery, a story of survival, loss, and maybe something far greater. The humans didn't know it yet, but this decision would change everything. The last thing Evelyn heard before stepping toward the airlock was the faint echo of that original voice, now barely audible through the static. "Help, please, someone." She took a deep breath and whispered, "We're here." And with that, the Deathworlders crossed into the unknown, carrying their courage and compassion into a place where no human had ever gone before. The Resolute Dawn glided carefully through the dense region of space that surrounded the alien signal. Every system on the ship was under strain. The view outside was strange and beautiful at the same time. Giant clouds of blue and green gas twisting slowly, lightning flickering through them like veins of fire. Magnetic storms made the ship tremble, and the crew had to constantly adjust course to avoid being pulled into sudden gravitational pockets. Space in this area felt alive, as if it were breathing, trying to push them back. But Commander Evelyn Hart stood firm. She watched every flicker of data on the main screen, refusing to let her fear show. The unknown had never stopped her before, and it wouldn't stop her now. Lieutenant Mara sat at her console, her hands moving fast across the controls. "Signal strength is decreasing," she reported. "If we lose it completely, we might not find the source again." Evelyn nodded calmly. "Then we'll find it before that happens. Full focus, everyone." Her voice was steady, but inside her thoughts were racing. What kind of civilization could have survived out here, and what kind of danger had forced them to send such a desperate call for help? Dr. Kellen sat beside her, analyzing the incoming data. "The readings don't match any known architecture," he said softly. "Their energy patterns are too smooth, almost natural. It's like the ship is alive." Darius, the pilot, raised his eyebrows. "Alive? You mean like a biological ship?" Kellen shrugged. "Maybe not alive like us, but something more advanced than mechanical metal. The structure seems to flow like it's grown, not built." That thought made the whole crew uneasy. They had encountered dozens of species before, but this was something new, something that felt ancient and alien in a way that words couldn't describe. The further they went, the worse the navigation became. Their sensors flickered, maps glitched, and the compass spun wildly. The uncharted region was filled with magnetic distortions that made it impossible to see clearly. Outside, the stars disappeared behind waves of energy storms. "We're losing visibility," Darius said, gripping the control stick tightly. "I can't even see where we're going." Evelyn placed a hand on his shoulder. "Trust your instruments. And trust yourself. Just keep us steady." He nodded, sweat forming on his forehead. Every second felt longer than the last. After several hours of slow, cautious travel, the signal began to pulse again. It was faint but rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Mara's eyes widened. "It's responding to us. The closer we get, the stronger it becomes." The crew leaned in toward the main screen, watching as the lines of data began to form a pattern. The message was no longer just random noise. Words, or at least something like words, began to take shape. "Survivors. Danger. Fading." The voice whispered through the static. "Please help." The sound sent a chill through the crew. It wasn't just a mechanical message. It was a voice filled with pain and fear. Evelyn took a deep breath. "Bring us in closer." Slowly. The engines rumbled as the resolute Dawn approached the source. Through the heavy mist of cosmic dust, a massive shadow began to appear. It was the alien vessel, much larger than any human ship, shaped like a crescent moon with long, curved wings. Its hull shimmered faintly under the light of distant stars, though most of it was scorched and broken. Huge cracks ran across its body, glowing softly like open wounds. "My God," Darius whispered. "That thing must be kilometers long." The ship floated motionless, surrounded by fragments of metal and debris. Some parts looked burned, others torn apart. It was clear that whatever had attacked them was powerful. "Scanning for life signs," Mara said. The results appeared on the screen. Weak biological readings scattered throughout the ship. "There are survivors," she whispered. The crew stared in silence. Against all odds, something or someone was still alive inside that wreck. But then the warning alarms began to beep. "Commander, we're picking up energy surges from the surrounding area," Darius said quickly. "Magnetic fluctuations are spiking again." Kellen frowned. "It's not random. It's reacting to the alien ship. Maybe the core is unstable." Evelyn turned to him. "Can we approach safely?" He hesitated. "Maybe, but we'll need to stay on constant power balance. One wrong pulse and we could be dragged into the gravity rift." Evelyn nodded without hesitation. "Do it." As the resolute Dawn moved closer, the alien ship's structure came into clearer view. Strange markings covered the hull, symbols glowing faintly in an unknown language. They pulsed like veins under skin. "Record everything," Evelyn ordered. This could be the first contact with a completely new species. The closer they got, the more they realized how damaged the alien vessel truly was. Entire sections were missing, floating off into space like broken bones. The airlock they finally located was half destroyed, but still functional enough for docking. While the engineers worked on stabilizing the docking clamps, the crew prepared for boarding. They equipped oxygen suits, energy scanners, and translation devices. Evelyn gathered them near the airlock. "We don't know what we'll find inside," she said quietly. "But remember, our mission is to help, not to harm. We go in as rescuers. No unnecessary weapons, no sudden movements." Everyone nodded. They trusted her completely. Even though the air felt heavy with fear, there was also excitement. They were about to step into history. The moment the two ships connected, a soft vibration passed through the resolute Dawn. The alien ship's surface seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, responding to the human presence. The lights on the bridge flickered. "Did the ship just react to us?" Darius asked. Mara checked her screen. "Yes, it's like it knows we're here." That idea was both fascinating and terrifying. Evelyn led the first team inside. The corridor on the alien ship was dim, filled with floating dust particles that sparkled in the glow of their helmets. The walls were smooth, almost liquid in texture, with faint blue lines that pulsed gently beneath the surface. It felt like walking inside a living organism. The air was thin but breathable. The silence was heavy, broken only by the echo of their footsteps. "This place is incredible," Dr. Kellen whispered, running his gloved hand along the wall. "It's technology fused with biology. I've never seen anything like it." As they moved deeper, they found signs of chaos, burned panels, scattered tools, and blackened areas where energy blasts had hit. Whatever had attacked the Vashari ship had done it with precision and cruelty. Then finally they reached a large chamber where several alien figures lay motionless on the floor. The humans froze. The creatures were unlike anything they had seen before. Tall, fragile, with crystal-like bodies that glowed faintly in shades of blue and silver. Some of them were shattered, their glowing fragments dimming like dying embers, but one of them moved weakly. It raised its arm, a faint light flickering from its chest. Evelyn knelt beside it, speaking softly through her translator. "We're here to help. Don't be afraid." The translator buzzed and hummed, trying to decode the alien language. After a few seconds, a trembling voice replied. "You came." It was soft, fragile, but full of emotion. The team quickly administered medical aid, using portable life support units to stabilize the being. Kellen checked the readings. "Its vitals are weak, but it's alive." They carefully placed the alien on a stretcher and prepared to move it back to the Resolute Dawn. But just as they were about to leave, the ship trembled violently. The lights dimmed, and strange sounds echoed through the corridors. "Energy surge," Mara's voice shouted over the comms. "Something's activating near your location." Evelyn looked around as the walls began to glow brighter. "Kellen, what's happening?" "The ship's core is reacting to our presence," he said urgently. "It's unstable. We need to get out now." The team ran through the twisting corridors, carrying the injured alien. The floor shook beneath them, sending waves of energy through the structure. Sparks rained from the ceiling as systems overloaded. Darius opened the airlock remotely, guiding them back to the Resolute Dawn. The moment they crossed over, the alien ship went completely dark. The pulsing lights faded and the silence returned. They had made it, but just barely. Back on the bridge, Evelyn looked at the alien lying in the medbay through the viewing glass. Its light pulsed faintly like a flickering candle. Dr. Kellen studied the readings, amazed. "Commander, this species uses energy as part of their biology. Their bodies generate light as a life force. If we can stabilize it, we might be able to communicate fully." Evelyn nodded, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and hope. "Then let's do it. Whatever happened to them, they're not alone anymore." Outside, the damaged alien ship drifted silently, still beautiful even in its broken state. The Resolute Dawn floated beside it like a guardian. No one spoke for a long time. They all knew that this was only the beginning. They had found life, something delicate and mysterious, and now it was their responsibility to protect it. Somewhere deep in the alien vessel, unseen by anyone, a faint light flickered once more, as if the ship itself was watching and waiting. The journey into the unknown had only just begun. Inside the alien ship, the silence felt endless. The crew of the Resolute Dawn worked carefully, their movements slow and cautious. Every sound they made echoed through the empty halls. The alien vessel, which they now knew belonged to a species called the Vashari, was like a labyrinth. The corridors were smooth, glowing faintly with blue veins of light that seemed alive, and the air carried a faint humming sound, like a heartbeat buried deep within the walls. Commander Evelyn Hart led the team through the dim pathways, her flashlight cutting across strange symbols etched into the walls. None of them could understand the writing, but it gave them a haunting feeling, as if the ship was telling a story of pain and survival. The injured alien they had rescued earlier was now stable aboard the Resolute Dawn. Its crystal-like skin had begun to glow again, showing signs of recovery. Dr. Kellen and Lieutenant Mara were monitoring it closely, trying to communicate using the translator. The alien's voice was soft and broken, its words hard to translate, but slowly they began to piece together fragments of its story. Its name was Saren, and it was one of the last engineers aboard the ship. The Vashari were explorers too, traveling the stars in search of knowledge much like the humans. But their journey had turned into a nightmare. They had been attacked by a hostile race, dark mechanical beings that gave no warning, no reason. They had come from the shadows and destroyed everything in minutes. As Saren spoke, Evelyn stood quietly in the medbay, listening to the translated words coming through the speakers. The alien's voice trembled. "They wanted our core, our energy. They destroyed our home ship. Only few survived." Evelyn felt a heavy knot form in her chest. "How many are still alive on your vessel?" she asked softly. Saren's eyes dimmed, glowing weakly. "Few, maybe 3. Evelyn looked at her crew. "We're going back." "We're bringing them out." Darius frowned. "Commander, that ship is falling apart. The core's unstable. One wrong move and..." Evelyn cut him off. If we leave them, they die. That's not an option. The decision was made. The team prepared once again, suiting up and readying their equipment. Outside, the alien ship floated silently, still surrounded by a thin mist of cosmic particles. It looked like a ghost drifting through space. The docking process was tense, every motion controlled with precision. As the airlock sealed behind them, the familiar glow of the alien walls returned, brighter this time, like the ship knew they had come back. Feels like it's alive, Darius muttered under his breath. Maybe it is, Kellen replied quietly. They moved through the corridors, guided by Saren's faint directions through the translator. The alien's voice echoed in their earpieces. Go to the lower chambers. Near the core, the deeper they went, the darker it became. The ship groaned under its own weight, and faint sparks flickered from broken systems. Suddenly, a faint sound reached them. A rhythmic clicking noise that grew louder. Evelyn raised her hand, signaling the team to stop. Did you hear that? She whispered. The clicking grew sharper, closer like metal tapping against metal. The team aimed their flashlights down the corridor. For a few moments there was nothing, just the shimmer of dust in the air. Then something moved. Out of the shadows crawled small, spider-like machines. Their bodies were made of black metal, their eyes glowing red. They moved fast, too fast. Contact! Darius shouted, firing a stun blast. The beam hit one of the creatures and it screeched, collapsing into a pile of sparks. But more came crawling from the darkness, climbing the walls and ceiling. Fall back, Evelyn ordered. The humans fired carefully, trying not to damage the ship itself. The corridor lit up with flashes of blue light as energy beams hit the metal creatures one by one. After several tense minutes, the last of them lay smoking on the ground. Breathing heavily, Kellen crouched to examine one. They're drones. Automated defense units. But their design isn't Vashari. These are the ones that attacked them. Evelyn looked at the charred remains of the machine. Then that means they're still out there, she said quietly. They moved quickly after that, deeper into the ship. The clicking sounds faded, replaced by the distant hum of the damaged energy core. When they reached the central chamber, they found it. 3 surviving Vashari, weak and motionless, their glowing forms flickering like dying stars. The humans rushed forward, setting up portable med units. Kellen checked the readings. They're alive, but not for long. The radiation here is killing them. Evelyn glanced at the center of the room where the massive core pulsed unevenly, spilling waves of unstable energy. Can we stabilize it? She asked. Kellen hesitated. Maybe for a short time, but the system is too advanced. We'd need Saren's help. Evelyn nodded. Then patch me through. Back on the Resolute Dawn, Saren was connected to the translator. His faint voice filled their helmets. The core must be cooled manually. The release valves? Deep within the chamber. Evelyn looked toward the glowing machinery. Can you guide us? Saren's light flickered. Yes, but hurry. If the core collapses, everything here dies. Following Saren's directions, Evelyn and Darius moved toward the control node. Sparks flew as they passed broken conduits and the floor trembled beneath them. Valve A, left side near the vent, Saren instructed. Evelyn pulled a lever and steam burst out, filling the chamber with a low hiss. The light of the core steadied slightly. Good, Saren said weakly. Now the second valve. Darius climbed onto a damaged panel, using his suit's strength enhancers to turn the second valve manually. The moment he did, the humming sound softened. The air felt cooler. That's it, Kellen said over the comm. Core temperature is dropping. We've bought ourselves some time. With the core stabilized, they began moving the surviving Vashari onto stretchers. Their crystal bodies shimmered faintly in the human's light. They're so fragile, Darius murmured as he carried one carefully. Evelyn's voice came through the comm. Handle them like glass. We're not losing anyone today. They made their way back through the corridors, their suits heavy with sweat. The ship creaked again, releasing another low rumble. It's destabilizing, Mara warned from the Resolute Dawn. You need to get out now. I'm detecting external movement, multiple signals. The crew froze. External movement? Evelyn repeated. Mara's voice was tense. Ship's commander. I think the attackers are back. The words hit like a shock. Outside radar readings began to spike. Dark, sharp-shaped vessels were emerging from the magnetic storms, their signatures matching Saren's description of the enemy. The attackers had returned to finish their job. We're out of time, Evelyn said sharply. Everyone back to the airlock now. They ran through the halls, the lights flickering wildly. Explosions echoed through the ship as the enemy began firing. The alien vessel shook violently, debris falling from above. Evelyn pushed forward, guiding her team through collapsing corridors. One of the stretchers slipped, and Kellen barely caught it in time. "I've got them," he shouted, gripping the glowing alien tightly. The group reached the docking chamber just as another explosion ripped through the hull. Flames and sparks filled the air. "Get them inside," Evelyn ordered. The crew rushed through the airlock, sealing it behind them. The Resolute Dawn's clamps released and the ship pulled away, engines roaring as they escaped the blast zone. From the bridge, they watched as the alien ship broke apart, its glowing veins dimming one by one. It was a heartbreaking sight. The vessel that had once carried an entire civilization now drifted into silence forever. Evelyn stood at the viewing window, her jaw tight. "We got them," she said quietly. "That's what matters." But their relief was short-lived. Alarms blared across the Resolute Dawn. "Commander, incoming fire!" Darius shouted. The enemy ships had locked onto them. Laser blasts streaked across the dark, shaking the Resolute Dawn. The humans scrambled to return fire, their defense turrets activating. "Evasive maneuvers," Evelyn ordered. "Keep them off our tail." Darius turned the ship sharply, dodging plasma bolts. "They're faster than us," he shouted. Mara's fingers danced across her console. Trying to jam their sensors, Kellen joined her, rerouting power to the shields. The ship vibrated violently as another blast hit the hull. "Shields at 60%, someone yelled. In the med bay, Saren weakly opened his eyes. He could hear the alarms through the translator. "They're coming," he whispered. "They will not stop." Evelyn turned toward the screen where his image appeared. "Then we won't stop either," she said firmly. The crew fought hard, their faces lit by the glow of emergency lights. Every shot they fired, every maneuver they made was a battle for survival. But it wasn't just about living. It was about protecting the fragile lives they had rescued. For the first time since leaving Earth, Evelyn felt the full weight of what it meant to be human in the universe, to stand between life and death, between mercy and destruction. As explosions rocked the ship and enemy fire surrounded them, she gritted her teeth and said to her crew, "We came here to save them. And that's exactly what we're going to do." The Resolute Dawn surged forward into the storm, ready to face whatever awaited them, while behind them, the broken remains of the alien ship faded into darkness, a silent witness to their courage. The stars outside the Resolute Dawn blurred into streaks of light as the ship raced through the chaos of space. Enemy vessels surrounded them like a pack of hungry wolves. The humans could see their sharp, dark shapes on the radar screens, swift, aggressive, and silent. They fired without warning, their plasma shots slicing through the void like glowing arrows. Each blast shook the ship, throwing sparks across the bridge. The alarm screamed, and the crew scrambled to respond. Commander Evelyn Hart stood in the center, her expression steady even as the ship trembled under the assault. "Shields up. Darius, take evasive maneuvers. Mara, return fire on my mark." The air was thick with tension. Darius gripped the controls tightly, guiding the ship through rapid turns to avoid the incoming fire. "They're everywhere, Commander," he shouted. "We can't outrun them." Evelyn looked at the radar. 5 enemy crafts were closing in fast, moving like shadows. "We're not going to outrun them," she said calmly. "We're going to outsmart them." She turned toward Lieutenant Mara, who was already scanning for weak points in the enemy formation. "Their flight pattern is too clean," Mara said. "They're AI-controlled, no emotion, no hesitation." Evelyn nodded. "Then let's give them something they don't expect." She pressed the intercom. "Engineering, I need power rerouted to forward thrusters and weapons. Forget balance, we're going to fight head-on." The ship roared as the engines flared to life. The crew felt the floor tremble beneath their feet. "Commander," Dr. Kellen warned, "if we push the thrusters that hard, we'll burn out the main coils." Evelyn didn't hesitate. "We won't need them if we're dead." "Do it." The humans had been called Deathworlders for a reason. They were stubborn, unpredictable, and at their strongest when facing death. The Resolute Dawn spun around sharply, surprising the enemy ships. Instead of running, the humans charged straight toward them. Plasma beams shot from their cannons, cutting through the dark. 2 enemy vessels were caught off guard, taking direct hits. They exploded in bright bursts of light. "Direct hit," Mara shouted, a grin spreading across her face. The rest of the attackers scattered, adjusting their formation. They didn't expect that, Darius said breathlessly. Evelyn smirked. Good. Let's make sure they never do. But the fight was far from over. The remaining ships recovered quickly, surrounding them again. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization. The Resolute Dawn shook violently, sparks raining from the ceiling. Shields at 30%. Kellen called out. Hull breach in Section 6, autoseal engaged. The lights flickered, casting long shadows across the bridge. Despite the damage, Evelyn's voice remained calm. Stay focused. They want us to panic. We won't give them that. In the medbay, Saren, the wounded Vashari, watched through the glass as chaos unfolded. His glowing body pulsed faintly with worry. They will not stop, he whispered through the translator. They are destroyers. They feed on energy, on life. Evelyn's voice came through the comm. We'll stop them. You have my word. Saren looked at her with faint light in his crystal eyes. You fight for others, not yourselves. That is rare. Outside, the stars flashed as another wave of plasma shots passed by. Darius spun the ship sharply, dodging at the last second. The hull groaned and alarms continued to blare. We can't take much more of this, Kellen shouted. Evelyn thought fast. If we can't beat them in open space, we'll change the field. She turned to Darius. Head for the nebula. Everyone looked at her in surprise. The nebula was a glowing storm of ionized gas and lightning, dangerous and unpredictable. Commander, we won't have any sensors inside, Mara protested. Evelyn met her eyes. Neither will they. With a burst of speed, the Resolute Dawn plunged into the nebula. Bright clouds of red and blue gas surrounded them, lightning streaking across the viewports. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. Static filled the communication systems. Navigation offline, Darius reported. We're flying blind. Evelyn stood steady. Then trust your instincts. Keep us between those two energy ridges. The ship weaved through the nebula, hiding among the glowing storms. Behind them, the enemy ships followed, but their formations began to break apart. The storm was interfering with their targeting systems. It's working, Mara said, excitement in her voice. They can't track us properly, but the relief was short-lived. One of the enemy ships fired blindly, and the blast hit near the rear engine. The explosion rocked the ship so hard that everyone was thrown from their seats. Engine 3 offline, Darius shouted. We're losing power. Kellen struggled to regain control of the systems. I can reroute through the auxiliary reactor, but it'll take a few minutes. Evelyn steadied herself against the console. You've got one. The bridge was filled with smoke, the lights flickering. Despite everything, the crew didn't stop. Darius focused on steering. Mara coordinated counterfire, and Kellen worked on stabilizing the reactor. Come on, he muttered under his breath, sweat dripping down his face. Hold together, you beautiful machine. Finally, the lights flickered back to full power. Engines online, Kellen shouted. Reactor stable for now. Evelyn gave a small nod. Good work. Let's finish this. Outside the ship, the enemy fleet was scattered among the lightning storms. Their sensors were malfunctioning, their movements chaotic. Evelyn saw the opportunity. Target the closest ship. Aim for their power core. Mara adjusted the weapons and fired. A bright beam shot through the nebula, hitting the enemy vessel dead center. The explosion lit up the clouds like a new sunrise. That's 3 down, Darius said, his voice shaking with adrenaline. 2 to go. The last 2 ships regrouped and came charging toward them, firing rapidly. Incoming, Mara shouted. The Resolute Dawn twisted and dove, plasma bolts grazing their hull. The ship rattled like it was coming apart. We can't keep this up, Kellen warned. Then we end it now, Evelyn said firmly. Her mind raced for an idea, and then it hit her. What's the status of the Vashari core we retrieved from their ship? Kellen blinked in surprise. It's still unstable, but intact. Why? Evelyn's eyes hardened. Because it can overload. If we trigger it remotely, it'll create an EMP burst strong enough to disable their systems. Mara's eyes widened. That could disable us too. Evelyn nodded. Yes, but if we time it right, we can shut down our own systems for just a few seconds and ride out the pulse. The crew exchanged quick, tense glances. It was risky, too risky, but they all knew it was their only chance. Evelyn gave the order. Prepare the core for detonation. On my mark, power down all non-essential systems and disengage weapons. Kellen rushed to the controls, Setting up the sequence. Core overload in 30 seconds, he shouted. Evelyn stood tall in the middle of the chaos, her eyes fixed on the approaching enemy ships. 20 seconds, Kellen called. The ships were getting closer, firing non-stop. Sparks flew as the bridge shook. 10 seconds. Darius tightened his grip on the controls. They're almost on us. Evelyn raised her hand. All systems down, now. The lights across the ship flickered off. The engines went silent. For a moment, everything was dark. Then a blinding white flash exploded across the nebula. The EMP burst spread like a wave, washing over the enemy ships. Their lights flickered and their weapons went dark. One by one, the vessels lost power, drifting helplessly. Inside the Resolute Dawn, emergency lights came back on. The humans held their breath, waiting for the readings. Enemy systems offline, Mara said slowly, staring at the screen. They're dead in the water. A wave of relief spread through the crew. Darius leaned back in his seat, exhaling hard. We did it, he whispered. But Evelyn didn't smile. Her eyes stayed on the drifting enemy ships. Make sure they stay that way, she said quietly. No one fires again unless they move first. Outside, the nebula was calm again. The enemy fleet floated silently, their once deadly weapons now useless. The Resolute Dawn hovered among the glowing clouds, its hull scorched and battered but still standing. The battle was over, at least for now. In the med bay, Saren opened his eyes. His glow was stronger now, pulsing softly. You fought for us, he said weakly through the translator. Even when the Dark Ones came back, why? Evelyn stood beside the glass, her uniform torn and her face streaked with ash. Because that's what we do, she said simply. We don't abandon those who need help. Saren's eyes shimmered like liquid light. The Vashari will remember, he whispered. In our history, your people will be known as saviors. Evelyn gave a tired smile. Just make sure we're not the last ones who believe in saving others. As the Resolute Dawn slowly left the nebula, the crew watched the silent enemy ships fade into the mist. The stars ahead looked brighter, the endless black a little less lonely. They had fought against death, chaos, and fear, and they had won. Not because they were stronger, but because they refused to give up. Evelyn looked out the viewport one last time, her reflection faint against the starlight. Let's go home, she whispered. The engines came to life once more, and the Resolute Dawn disappeared into the horizon of the stars, leaving behind only the soft echo of their courage in the endless dark. The Resolute Dawn drifted through the quiet of space, its hull scarred and blackened from the battle. Inside, the crew moved slowly, tired but alive. The tension that had filled the ship for hours was finally beginning to fade. They had survived. The enemy ships were gone, silent wrecks lost somewhere in the nebula behind them. Yet, even as the danger passed, the memory of the fight still clung to everyone like smoke. Commander Evelyn Hart sat in her chair, staring at the endless stars. The hum of the engine sounded softer now, almost peaceful. Darius turned in his seat and said, We did it, Commander. We actually made it. Evelyn gave a faint smile. We did, Darius. But let's not forget why we came here in the first place. In the med bay, Saren was recovering. His crystal-like body glowed brighter with each passing hour. The Vashari survivor was still weak, but his energy had stabilized. When Evelyn entered the room, he lifted his eyes to her. You risked much for me, he said softly through the translator. Your ship was nearly destroyed. Evelyn shook her head. It was worth it. We couldn't just ignore a distress signal no matter who sent it. Saren tilted his head. Your kind, humans, you fight even when there is no hope. You fight for others even when you gain nothing. Evelyn looked at him for a moment and then said quietly, Maybe that's what makes us human. The crew had gathered in the central hub for a debriefing. Everyone looked exhausted. Some had burns, others had bruises, but their spirits were still strong. Kellen leaned against a console, rubbing his sore shoulders. Engines are holding together, barely, he said. We'll need a full rebuild once we reach a station. Mara smirked. That's assuming we can find one that isn't trying to kill us. A few people laughed weakly. It felt good to hear laughter again. Evelyn nodded. We'll get the ship fixed. What matters is that we kept our promise to help whoever needed it. She looked at the crew one by one. You all did something incredible out there. You proved that no matter how far from home we go, humanity still stands for something. Darius frowned slightly. Commander, what if this wasn't the end? What if there are more of those things out there? Evelyn looked thoughtful. There probably are. The universe is too big for this to be an isolated incident, but we'll deal with that when it comes. For now, we send word back to command. They need to know what we found. She paused and then added, and they need to know who we saved. Saren's recovery continued over the next few days. The more he regained his strength, the more he began to speak about his people. The Vashari had once been a peaceful race devoted to art and energy harmony. They built cities that glowed like stars, and they believed every life carried a light that connected to the universe itself. But then the harvesters came, a ruthless species that fed on living energy. They invaded without warning, stripping worlds bare. The Vashari fought back but couldn't match their brutality. Saren had been aboard a fleeing vessel when the attackers found them. His ship had sent a distress call, but he hadn't expected anyone to respond. "I thought my light would fade alone in the dark," he said softly. "But then your ship came." Evelyn listened silently. She felt a strange mix of sorrow and pride. The human race had once been seen as dangerous, Deathworlders, violent and unpredictable. But in moments like this, she realized how far they had come. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were protectors. The galaxy might still fear them, but maybe one day that fear could turn into respect. Days passed and the ship limped toward the nearest Alliance outpost. Outside the windows, stars drifted like silent witnesses. Inside, repairs continued nonstop. The crew worked with determination, even joking sometimes to keep their spirits up. The battle had changed them. They had faced death together and come out stronger. Darius and Mara spent long hours recalibrating the weapon systems. Kellen repaired damaged circuits with steady hands despite his exhaustion. Evelyn moved from section to section, helping wherever she could, encouraging everyone. One evening, she found herself alone in the observation deck. The nebula they had escaped from still shimmered faintly in the distance, glowing like a wound in the sky. She thought about the battle, the fear, the chaos, the choices she had made. They had almost died more than once, yet they had stood their ground. Evelyn wondered if that was what humanity's purpose was out here. Not to conquer, but to remind the galaxy that courage still existed. Behind her, Saren entered quietly. His steps made no sound on the metal floor. "You still watch the stars," he said. "Do they comfort you?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Sometimes. They remind me that even in darkness there's always light." Saren looked out the window. "Your people, they shine brightly. Too brightly, perhaps. The universe notices such light. It will either follow it or try to destroy it." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Then we'll keep shining anyway." When the resolute dawn finally reached the Alliance outpost, they were greeted with surprise and disbelief. The outpost commander, a tall alien with gray skin and sharp eyes, looked at the damaged ship and said, "We thought you were lost." Evelyn replied calmly, "Almost. But we found something worth the fight." She introduced Saren to them, explaining everything that had happened. The commander's expression shifted from skepticism to awe. "You brought back a Vashari?" he said quietly. "Their species was thought extinct." Evelyn nodded. "Not anymore." News of the rescue spread quickly across the Alliance. For many, it was the first story in years that gave people hope. The Deathworlders, the feared humans, had saved someone when no one else dared to. Reports came from other stations sharing the story of the Resolute Dawn. Some called it madness, others called it bravery, but to those who understood, it was something greater. It was a reminder that compassion still had a place in the galaxy. Back on the ship, life slowly returned to normal. The crew rested, repaired, and prepared for their next mission. Yet something in them had changed forever. Mara said it best one morning while sharing breakfast with Darius. "You know," she said, sipping her drink, "we always hear stories about humans being the dangerous ones. Maybe it's time people start telling the other kind of story." Darius chuckled. "Yosa, the kind where we save people instead of scaring them." They both laughed quietly. Saren, now strong enough to move on his own, spent much of his time learning about humanity. He was fascinated by their music, their laughter, and their stubborn hope. "Your songs," he said one day to Evelyn, "they sound like memories trying to stay alive." Evelyn smiled. "That's exactly what they are." Before he left for the Alliance Council, Saren turned to her one last time. "When my people hear your name, they will know what it means to fight for life, not power. You have given the Vashari a second chance, Evelyn replied softly. Then make it count. Don't waste the light you've been given. After Saren departed, the ship felt a little emptier, but there was also peace. The humans had done what they came to do. They had answered a call, not knowing what waited for them, and had changed the fate of another species. That night, Evelyn stood once again at the observation deck. The stars seemed endless, stretching far beyond what any ship could reach. She thought about Earth, about home, and about how far humanity had come from their small blue planet. Kellen joined her quietly, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. You know, he said, handing her one, most people would call what we did insane. Evelyn took a sip and smiled. They'd be right, he laughed softly. But I'd do it again. She looked at him. So would I. The Resolute Dawn continued its journey, slower now but steady. Its scars were marks of survival, reminders of the battle they had won and the lives they had saved. Across the galaxy, whispers began to spread, stories of humans who faced death and answered cries for help without hesitation. Some called them reckless. Others began to call them something else entirely, guardians. And somewhere deep in space, among the ruins of what was once a battlefield, faint signals pulsed, echoes of the past and the promise of what was to come. The universe was vast, filled with danger and darkness. But as long as ships like the Resolute Dawn sailed among the stars, there would always be hope. Evelyn looked ahead at the horizon, the stars shimmering like tiny fires. Let's find the next call, she said quietly. And with that, the engines flared to life once more. The Resolute Dawn turned toward the unknown, leaving behind trails of light across the darkness, a symbol of humanity's endless courage and unyielding heart, a promise that no cry for help would ever go unanswered again.